Who's generated more in sales from YouTube, Mr. Beast or this guy? Well, if you said Mr. Beast, you're wrong, because this guy generated $10 billion in sales via his YouTube channel and landed himself $1.6 million in affiliate income in 1 month as a result. His name is Max Maher, and the craziest thing about him is this isn't the most exceptional thing he's done. By the age of 21, he'd already sold 2 businesses, he grew his YouTube channel to 900,000 subscribers, built one of the largest Patreon accounts of all time, and whilst he was doing this, he built a simple system to run all of his businesses for him so he can do whatever he wants with his time. So to help YouTubers learn how to make money from affiliates, build Patreon accounts, online businesses and teams, I called him up and he unleashed some game-changing advice any YouTuber who's serious about making money needs to hear, including his unbelievably simple strategy for building a rock-solid team. This video is sponsored by Riverside, the awesome interview software that enabled us to create this remote interview in glorious high definition. Can you just tell us, how did you make $1 million in a single month on YouTube?
In 2020, when businesses were shutting down in the pandemic, there was all these government programs that were coming out in the US. And as soon as they came out, they were insanely confusing. Like the application itself was something like 25 pages long. And as a business owner myself, I was like, jumping into this, let me make sure I do this, let me make sure I understand it so I can like make sure my employees are still on payroll. And like we didn't know what was going on. So I'm going through this application and I was like, I should just make a video on this. This is so confusing. So I go through the whole process, I figure it all out, I make a video, I post it that night. Overnight, it's my most popular video I've ever posted. I think it got like 30,000 views in the first day, which my second best was probably like 2,000 views. And I'm like, okay, I think there's something here. So then I post a follow-up video with like more questions and answers and more assistance. That one does well as well. So I'm like, let me just be as helpful as humanly possible. So I kept on posting and like searching everything I could. I was reading through like 1,000-page law documents, answering questions that no one else was answering. And I just, over like the course of a few months, became the go-to person, the go-to authority for what's called the Paycheck Protection Program. There was like a 2 or 3 month period. And then another program came out that was the exact same thing. It was PPP round 2. And this time the banks were like ready. They're like, okay, we understand this. We know how we're going to make money from it. And all of a sudden, all these banks are calling me, emailing me, like, we want to partner with you on getting our product out to all of these small business owners. So through that, I had an affiliate deal where it's like, hey, sign up through me and this bank I've partnered with, and I'll get a small commission. And you'll have this easy process. You can just follow my videos and I'll answer every question you possibly have on this. And every single day I was putting out videos. I think I made something like 500 videos on this specific topic. And eventually I got about 58,000 businesses to sign up through my specific links. And that equated to just over $10 billion in funding to these businesses and about $1.6 million in commissions to me. That was all paid in one single month lump sum at the end of the program.
Did you buy anything nice to celebrate?
No, I didn't buy a single thing. It really didn't change anything. I keep it simple. I drive a $2,000 car.
So an answer like that is the kind of thing that if you clipped it from an interview and posted it to Reels, TikTok or Shorts, it would blow up. And that's one thing I love about interviews, because thanks to Riverside, which I recorded this one on, I can literally go to their platform, type in the word affiliate, and then see every place in our 40-minute interview that Max said affiliate. And then I can find the best nuggets and Riverside will clip it out for me into a portrait video. I mean, look at this. Max said, I found an affiliate product that made my audience about 10 billion. That's like the best hook of all time. And it took me like 10 seconds to find and turn into a short clip. This has got to be the easiest way to repurpose interviews ever. Riverside, if I could take you out for a steak meal to say thanks, I totally would. But I can't. So instead, I'm just going to edit this interview even more by seeing what Max said and then deleting words from the transcript that I don't want, and Riverside just cuts it out. It's flipping easy. Anyway, get back to the interview with Max. I've got a lot of clips to cut out.
When it comes to affiliate marketing then, what do you think the biggest mistake people make when they start out trying to do it is?
Yeah, I think the problem comes down to just how people monetize their audience. Like people who struggle to monetize their audience, I think they fall into one of 2 camps. They're either way too greedy, and those people are obvious. Like you just see them, any random company emails them and they're like, we'll give you $10,000 to push this scam. They're like, $10,000, I'll do that. And then they do it. And unfortunately, they make a lot of money in the short run, but then like their audience figures it out. You know, your audience is smart. You have to remember that. Your audience figures it out, and then eventually like you lose almost all your fans. And then you have this other group that are just way too timid, and they're like, oh, but it's going to ruin my content if I pitch anything. I don't want to like make my audience mad at me. And they're wrong too, because if you can find stuff that actually aligns with what you're producing, you're giving a better product to your audience. Like if you're a golf coach and you're making content on how to putt better, 8 tips on how to putt better, and you make this wonderful video that's like the most helpful video on how to putt. And then at the end of the video, you say, if you want this process to go even quicker, even easier, for $50, you can buy this product and it's going to cut the time in half. Your audience is going to be like, oh, that's helpful too. And they're going to buy it. Like half of them are going to buy it. So you just find the obvious thing. You learn how to pitch it. You align it. It's so simple, but it's like the most profitable thing you can do.
Do you have any advice that you could give on finding the right product for people?
So the easiest stuff to pitch always is like your own thing. If you have a Patreon, it's super easy to pitch. No audience member is going to be like, oh, why is he pitching his Patreon? It is you. You're pitching more of you. The next level is like your own product and service. If you're like, I launched this company and here I am pitching it. Again, your audience is like, well, obviously he's pitching his own company. I would hope he'd pitch his own company, you know? And then the next level beyond that is third-party stuff. So third-party stuff, that's where you have to be more careful, like making sure it's a really good company, making sure that they actually have good landing pages. Because you'll find a lot of companies will have affiliate programs, but you don't know what the results are exactly. You'll look at their landing page, it's just a mess. Like you can just tell this is not going to sell well. I try to avoid those. Obviously, that comes with experience. I think it's really important to understand copywriting as a YouTuber and like what actually sells, no matter your niche. And then, yeah, again, just finding those products that really align with whatever it is that you're talking about. This is harder with something like entertainment, because it's like what exactly aligns. But if you're doing any kind of niche, it's typically pretty easy. There's products for everything.
So you've done a lot of different things when it comes to making money, businesses off YouTube, different types of revenue generation on YouTube. If you started again now and you wanted to make another $1 million, what would be your first step?
I would find a niche that I can be an authority in, that ideally I'm very, very passionate about. Like I want to find the answers and I want to be the expert. And third, ideally has an audience with above average income. That's just going to make your life a whole lot easier. And then going back to what I said earlier, I would have the goal of just being as helpful as humanly possible. Like you want people watching your content and be like, this is so good. Why is this free? You just give 10x and you get a certain percentage back. Like I've found that's just kind of how the internet works. Like
so you're in the top 50 Patreons at one point, and you got up to $165,000 a month from it.
Yeah, and in a matter of 4 months, I think we went from $2,000 a month to $165,000 a month, and I think 11,000 members on our Patreon.
So talk to us about how you did it and what you see people do wrong. You know, what do you think people do wrong when they're managing their own Patreon that stops them from getting to, say, 6 figures a month on it?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is having a compelling offer. I find a lot of times, like, if it's just, hey, here's more content of me or support me here, it's kind of a hard sell. Like your true fans, they will sign up. You'll get some amount of signups, but it has to be a really compelling offer. If it's just more content, I think that the people who do it really well are comedians, where they'll have, here's my free podcast on YouTube. They say something juicy and they'll be like, oh, we'll save that for the Patreon. So you're creating that kind of FOMO, like, ooh, I should join that Patreon. Because there's some comedians that are making now $250,000 a month off of just Patreon, the very top guys, and that's exactly how they do it. So using those kind of selling techniques and actually selling properly. So you need to have something that's of real value. And I found that using that FOMO tactic really works. Like, here's this thing that you're missing out on behind this paywall. It's really great. It's even better than what we have here. For anyone who's a fan, and it's like, let's say it's $5 a month. It's a pretty compelling offer, to be like, this is this guy I like. He has even better stuff. I'll try it out, and then they just stay signed up because it's that monthly thing.
And how did you keep people within it? Because I imagine for most people, keeping people paying their monthly subscription is one of the toughest bits.
I think something that needs to be discussed more is opening a Patreon. That's an entirely different business than your content business. You now need people managing that thing. You have customer service. You have a lot going on over here. It's a lot of work. So it's not a small decision to make by any means. It's definitely a lot easier than making your own site, using Patreon, but it's a lot of work, and churn is definitely a big problem. But I think that you keep the members by continuing to provide that excellent content that actually is better than your YouTube content. And you do it by giving people an inside look into what you're doing. So there's a lot of people who have a Patreon that's they post an extra video there once a month, but maybe they do 10 updates every single month up to that post just to like communicate that, hey, this is what we're working on. You're, essentially saying like your money's not going nowhere. We're working on this stuff. And that seems to work pretty well to keep that retention, but it's definitely tough.
And how much of your own time did you put into Patreon?
Quite a bit. It took like 2 months to get up to 2,000, and that was just me. And I was like, this is not how I should be doing this. So then I hired an entire team, and I was confident in my pitch that like, okay, anyone I send to my Patreon, they're going to be taken care of. I don't have to worry about that. And that's when I was scaled it from 2,000 to 165,000. So I had 4 people managing it at that time. We now have, I think, 12 full-time people working on our membership site.
You don't have the Patreon anymore, which most people probably think, well, why would you get rid of such a successful Patreon? But just talk us through what you did instead and why you did it.
Yeah, so my background is all actual brick and mortar businesses before YouTube. And I started that Patreon, and it was always in the back of my head, like, man, if this was an entity making $165,000 a month recurring, that's a business that's worth $10 million. But on Patreon, it's nothing. Like, it is worth the, how much I'm making recurring, but I can't sell a Patreon. So it seemed like it was the obvious choice. I had to build my own platform that I could host all the content, that I could host all the members, and then I actually have a business that I can grow and grow and grow and build equity in, and eventually exit if I wanted to, or do all kinds of interesting things with that actual entity.
How would you go about then selling something like that?
With Phenova, I don't think I ever will sell it, but I have built it in a way that I could sell it, which is essentially just saying you build it right. So it comes down to just tracking your finances, making sure everything is in order, making sure everything is systemized. Like there's a process for literally everything. If there's emails coming in, there's some kind of SOP, some kind of just step-by-step process that's followed, that thing gets solved. It's not you, the YouTuber or content creator, facilitating every piece. There's people doing all that. It runs itself. That's really what it is. You have to have an operation with clear finances that runs itself, that makes good money, and you can sell it, essentially.
So that's what you've always been very good at, because I remember us chatting a while ago about your channel. And how many people did you have working on the actual channel in terms of editors and writers and so on for a while? It was quite a lot.
At peak, when we were doing 3 videos a week, and each one had about 200 production hours in it. I think we had about 45 people on the production team.
I always joke that you have more hours in a day than most people because you need to do so much. But
it's so exciting. I just feel like there's so much cool stuff to do. Like, got to do it.
But you always go into with the aim of, I need to turn this into a system.
It just makes your life so much easier. It's like, so I have a moving and storage business. I ran that myself. I was the head of operations for 5 or 6 years. And the first 2 or 3 years, I was constantly putting out fires. Every single problem that happened, I was picking up the phone like, yeah, here's how you fix the printer. And I'm like, having to just deal with BS every single day. And then eventually I read this book called Work the System. And I was like, oh, this is so obvious. Just make a system for everything. So I spent like the next month making just a Google Doc step by step on how to do every single thing in the business, including fixing the printer, how to answer the phone call, how to sell someone, how to call the mechanic if one of the trucks break down. And I wrote them in a way where I could pull any random person off the street and give them this step by step, and they could basically follow it. Like dumbed down as simple as can possibly be. And I thought that this was going to be like way harder than it was. It ended up being about 55 separate how-to documents to run my entire business. That was like consuming my whole life. So once I did that, I essentially had nothing to do. I was like, with the same amount of employees, I didn't hire anyone new. I now had nothing to do. So I still own that business. I spend about 1 hour a month on that business, just reviewing the finances. And it pays about $150,000 in cash every single year.
So you do 12 hours work for 150K?
Yeah.
That's not bad, yeah. Especially considering that is not an online business. Do you know what I mean? You hear those sort of numbers from online ones that are infinitely scalable. So let's just bring this down to YouTube terms. Say you've got a YouTube channel, you've got to write a system for everything. Can you give us an example of what that might look like for one part? So let's say writing or thumbnails, or would that all go into one guide, or would you make it thumbnail, writing, editing guide, filming, and so on?
I would separate them as much as possible. So everyone's writing guide is going to be different. You're going to have to come up with like, this is my style. This is the tone that I go for. So when I was doing a lot of like explainer videos, I had a writing guide. Follow this. This is exactly how you research this topic. This is exactly how you write an outline. This is exactly how you write the final product. This is the tone of speech that things should be written in. And I wrote it in a step-by-step format. It's just like a brand guideline. You know, if you pay some company to make all kinds of new branding, it's like, use these colors, use these shapes, use these fonts. You can actually be more creative because of those guidelines. So that's essentially what you're doing with like a writing guideline or a thumbnail guideline. It's like, these are the thought processes. Here are the checks that you can use to confirm those thought processes after you've written or created those things to verify.
How long would it take someone to get used to your structure and system before they're sort of in the flow and become a valuable part of the team?
Really good people, almost immediately. Bad people, it's pretty rare for someone to be bad, like actually bad, straight up, and then they turn good 2 weeks later. That's really rare. Like most of the time, when they're good, they're either straight up good right away, or you can tell that they're going to be good. They ask a couple of questions and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it now. You know, so it's definitely that like hire fast, fire fast thing. And the best people are obsessed. Like my best writers, they are obsessed with writing. They're obsessed with reading. And that goes for anything. You know, if you have an editor who's like really, really good, chances are he's constantly learning. He has some side project that's super interesting. Like you can usually tell when they're like, this is my thing. I love this thing.
If I wanted to hire someone, one of the questions I could maybe put on the application is, what are you obsessed with?
Yeah, so something I like to ask is, what's the most recent thing that you've learned? And it's just an open-ending question. And you can gain a lot from that, because some people will just put something that's like nothing, you know, and other people will write this long, passionate paragraph about something cool that they learned and how they associate it to their life. It's like, that's the kind of person I like to be around.
And if you want to learn more about how Max generated $10 billion, check out this video here next for the full deep dive.